This video is the introduction to two sample means and using a confidence interval. Okay, so two sample means that we have two samples that are independent. So I have basically two groups without any overlap. So I have sample 1 and I have sample 2. Now, without any overlap means, am I comparing teens and adults? The book loves men and women, but whatever two groups that you have where you are assuming that there is no overlap. Okay, well, if I have this one sample, then I'm going to have data, and I can have the sample mean and the standard deviation. So I'm only putting a 1 underneath so you know it belongs to sample 1. You technically don't have to do that. Okay, and then of course our sample size of this first group. Okay, let's say that I want to look at, how about GPAs? Let's say that I want to look at the GPAs of engineering majors and science majors. So this will be science and engineering versus business majors. And I want to know if they are similar, close enough to be considered the same, or if they are different. Okay, so let's say that the average GPA here was 3.6. I had a standard deviation of 0.24, and let's say I asked 30 of those students. Okay, in my business majors group, let's say that the GPA was 3.8. Let's say that the standard deviation was 0.29, and let's say that I asked 25 people. Okay, now a couple things I want to point out. Number one, I totally made up these numbers, so don't panic if you're science and engineering or business or whatever, okay? So completely made up. But what I want to point out is that we can see that we have different GPAs, that in this example, the business majors are higher than the science and engineers. However, what we're curious about is this difference a real difference? Or is this close enough to be still considered the same? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a confidence interval. And just like we did back in chapter 7, when I get a confidence interval, this interval is going to be measuring the difference. Okay, so this is the whole idea of capturing 0 versus not capturing 0. Okay, if we remember from our previous chapter's work, if I captured 0 with the confidence interval, it meant that the two proportions, but in this case it's the two means, are close enough to be considered statistically the same. If I don't capture 0, I love how I wrote not capture 0. I don't capture 0. Then that means that the two are in fact different. Okay, so we can see currently that we believe these two to be different, but again, our confidence interval is going to show us whether it is a big enough gap to be considered statistically different. So in just a minute, we're going to use StatCrunch to create our confidence interval and then interpret it. Okay, before I go there though, I want to point out that this is called summarized data. Summarized data because I have it in a summary of the facts versus a list of 30 GPAs. Okay, and last but not least, hopefully you'll notice that one group is 30 and one group is 25. They don't have to be the same sample size, but they do need to be close, pretty close. You don't want 30 and 500. Okay, so similar sized. All right, in the next video, we will be doing our confidence interval for this using StatCrunch.